This podcast is brought to you by PLI, the Practicing Law Institute. PLI is committed to keeping you ever current on the dynamic trends shaping the legal world. Learn more at pli.edu/ftpod.
Welcome to Fast Tracked, Emergent Issues in the Legal Profession, brought to you by the Practicing Law Institute. I'm your host, Jen Leonard, founder of Creative Lawyers. Buckle up as we hit the gas and explore the most dynamic trends shaping the legal world. I hope you'll join us as we explore the future of law today. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Practicing Law Institute's podcast, Fast Tracked, Emergent Issues in the Legal Profession. I'm your host, Jen Leonard, founder of Creative Lawyers. And if you've been following us, you know that every episode we bring in a leader from across the legal profession to talk to us about all of the converging trends that are driving an era of real transformation in legal and what it means for you and your practice wherever you are in the profession. And I could not be more excited for our guest today. I get the chance in my day job to travel all around to different law firms, different corporate legal departments and teams. And our guest today has really stood out to me as one of the most impressive leaders of a global legal team I have seen. So I thought we need to get her onto the podcast and share her brilliance with the entire field. So with that, I am delighted to welcome to the pod Lucy Lopez, who is Chief Legal Officer and Corporate Secretary at Spencer Stuart, a leading global executive search and leadership consulting firm. Lucy has also spent much of her career with McKinsey as Deputy General Counsel and Head of Legal for the Americas. And before that, practiced with Debevoise and Plimpton. So we are so excited to have you here, Lucy. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Jen. And when you say such kind words about me, it blows me away because I am always in awe of you and your work and what you're doing for our profession and how you're making us think forward. And so delighted to be here and delighted to be part of this discussion with you and PLI, another great organization.
Love it. So many great stakeholders. And thank you so much for the kind words. That's so lovely to know. That means a lot to me. And we are both graduates of the same law school, Penn Carey Law School. So
more excellence. I love it.
That's right. So thank you for spending your very, very valuable time with us today. I knew you don't have a lot of time available, so we're grateful. And I'd just like to start out by acknowledging the time that we're all working in and that you're leading legal teams in. There is a lot happening in the world and a lot of uncertainty. And part of that uncertainty is economic and trying to get purchase around what is happening in the broader economy, what it means for our businesses, what it means for our legal teams. So I'm curious, as a leader, how you think about the landscape and advising your team on how to prioritize initiatives and resources while maintaining strategic value to the business in the face of all of this turmoil and change.
Yeah, great question to kick us off with. I am always very mindful of how stretched my team is, and I am amazed by how much they are handling, and I am trying to be as helpful to them as possible in helping them figure out how can we be the most effective professionals in our function to help our business. So our professionals are busy on our legal team, and I know that they are so committed to the firm and to their work. I also know that our business people, our business leaders are super busy. They're running from solving one problem to the next. I'm pretty stretched myself. So how do we bring all of that together, all of us moving quickly in a world that is increasingly complex? And on top of that, Jen, we have a commitment to excellence. So we actually want to deliver in that context. We want to deliver excellence. We are and we aspire to be and want to continue to be a high performing team. So how do we bring this all together in a way that achieves the business objectives while allowing us to deliver excellence as professionals, but at the same time having a little enjoyment in what we're doing. So bringing all of those things together is not easy. It is a constant challenge. So how do I think about it and how do I talk about it with my team? I think about it in two parts. One is the opportunities first, and I'll get to that, what I mean by that in a minute. And the second piece is the risks. And I can't help myself. I'm a lawyer. I have to think about risks. So I think about this dual-pronged approach of opportunities and risks. First, the opportunities. What do I mean by that? We have to have a very clear vision of what our leaders are trying to do. What are the strategic objectives? And what is the vision that our business is driving towards? We must have that clear. And that means having conversations with the relevant business leaders to understand their priorities. It means me having conversations with my CEO, to whom I report, to understand his vision and his priorities and to let him know how I'm prioritizing and testing with him. Does this seem right to you? Or do I need to pivot? Here's what I'm doing and why. Does this seem right to you? And doing that frequently. And then also having conversations, and this I find so important and so helpful, other functions, the office of the CFO, HR, technology, because it doesn't help us as a legal function to be in our little silo and moving along with, guidance from our CEO and our business leaders if we're not aligned with these other critical partners in the business to make sure that we're all rowing in the same direction and that we're not driving something in legal that our technology officer, our chief technology officer would say, why are you doing that? And you didn't tell me. Mm-hmm. Or how do you think about that when we're doing these other two things? So aligning on the opportunities to me is hugely important with the business leaders, with the very top of the house, the CEO, and with the leaders of other functions to ensure that we're all pushing towards the same vision. Do not go into a silo. That will sink you very quickly. So I constantly have to remind my team of that and myself, because otherwise I'm in reactive mode and I forget those core messages. So that's the opportunities, alignment on the opportunities. Then the second piece is the risks, because it's not necessarily the case, no matter how wonderful our business leaders are, it's not necessarily the case that they're going to be naturally thinking about the risks. So it is incumbent upon us as a leading function to proactively think about, okay, what are the risks that are not coming to us, that are not in front of us, that we need to be thinking about proactively around the corner, and then strategizing to figure out how we bring those to the attention of the business to achieve the objectives the business wants to achieve, while at the same time managing these fundamental risks. Because we are stewards, we are the conscience of the organization, we are the protectors of the organization, and we have that job to do. So thinking about the risks, and then I tend to put them on a matrix because we're not going to manage every single risk. That is impossible, if not unreasonable. So my matrix, how likely is a risk to arise? And then on the other end, the likely severity. And I remind the team, let's make sure that we are not losing sight of the ones that are highly likely to happen and could have a significant adverse impact on the firm, on the organization, on the enterprise. All the other ones, we're going to worry about them, but let's not lose sight of what could really hurt us. And let's make sure we're focusing on that first and prioritizing those first. So that's my framework. It's opportunities, it's risks, and then as to the risks, putting them on a matrix so that we don't lose sight of what is really important and go into reactive mode. Let's just answer the 1,000 emails and we're exhausted at the end of the night, but we haven't managed the one thing, the meteor, right?
That's right. That's right. And this is a super tactical question. Do you have an actual matrix somewhere, or is this a conceptual framework that your team thinks about?
It's a conceptual framework and I can visualize it.
Mm-hmm.
And I get a lot of questions from my team. I get a lot of questions from peers in the organization, in other functions, colleagues, and they ask me the question, what's keeping you up at night, Lucy? Or help me prioritize this. How do you think about this? And I describe that matrix.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that everybody uses it, but I talk about it very frequently because I think it helps me, it helps my team. And the more we talk about it, perhaps the more people will actually implement it and use it. And frankly, help us so that we don't get distracted. If a business person asks me, hopefully they'll apply the matrix. So I don't have it written down, but I can clearly see it in my head.
It's amazing. And as you're talking, intentionally or not, and one of the ways we've been in contact is around innovation. So many of the techniques that you use in both opportunities and challenges and risks are sort of textbook ways of thinking about innovation, right? Like breaking down silos and making sure that people are connecting with one another. I just wrote down a couple of these as you were talking, aligning your work with the important business objectives that you're serving. One thing that I wrote down that I just think is so important and so many leaders miss because they're trying so hard to get through the day to day is making sure that their team members have meaning and purpose in their work. Why do you think of that as being so paramount in helping drive the team forward?
This business of lawyering and being an advisor and a counselor, there's a human there. And on the other side of that relationship is another human. How those humans are feeling and experiencing the day, I think is going to define the output of the work. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, my team is a team of people, and how they are feeling about their work, how good an understanding they have of what is happening in the business, how good an understanding they have of what their peers are doing, what their colleagues are doing, and what is the impact of their work. That is going to drive how we're feeling at the end of the day. Did I have a day where I had meaningful, lasting impact on an enterprise? Yes or no? Because if the answer is no, then I might say, and maybe this is me, but I might say, what am I doing here? And why aren't I doing something else that gives me more joy? This work is difficult. This is difficult stuff. You have to have some, serious readiness to handle some challenges. But if you are enjoying what you are doing and you are connecting across an enterprise and you're driving towards something, I think you feel better about what you're doing and you're more willing to show up the next day to do it again. At least that drives me. I don't just want to be working for the sake of working. I want to be making things better, right, with other people who are equally energized by making things better.
It's such an important part of leadership, and one that I really think does not get enough prioritization. And like you're saying, I mean, the thought among talented, smart people might be, why am I doing this if I don't feel like and all the research sort of supports the importance of intrinsic motivation and meaning. So let's talk about the phenomenal people on your team. You lead a global team. How many different locations around the globe are your people in?
So let's see, we have folks in several cities in the US, a nice hub in Chicago. We have folks in Singapore and China and India and Amsterdam and Dublin, Ireland, and soon London and New York. So lots of different places, not, 200 cities, but a good number of geographies with very different norms, mm-hmm. very different approaches to working, very different market dynamics. And yet we have to make sure as a team that we are one. We are one team in one farm driving towards the same thing.
So when you say that, it sounds so lovely and so exciting, but it's not so easy to do, like you said, with all of these different cultures and norms and even just time zones. How do you foster collaboration across your team in such a sort of broad geographic footprint that they have.
One thing I have observed over the years in working for global firms, and I'm very proud of the fact that I've worked for 3 firms, 3 global partnerships. So there's some themes and you learn some things in those experiences. But one of the things I've learned through the years is that it's sometimes very easy to get into a silo of a geography and come to the view that this is the way things work here. This is what works here. This is what our external clients demand and look for. Here's how our business works. The culture is different. Therefore, we must do it this way. And it's easy, I think, to fall into that. It's just easier to solve for where you are. And it's very challenging to step way back and look at, but how is it done over there and why? And what can we learn from that? Mm-hmm. And how can I do what I do here better, having learned from those other areas? And by the way, if we're part of a global enterprise, how do we make sure we're being consistent on some basic principles so that suddenly this client that is a client of this country, and then they become a client of that country, that client isn't looking sideways and saying, I'm sorry, you guys, do you have your act together? Mm-hmm. Because you're being inconsistent. So there are all those dynamics that we have to contend with when we're part of a global enterprise. You need consistency. You need principles, even though, of course, you're going to adapt to make things work in a place locally. So what are some things that I have found have worked? And there's no magic in these. I'm sure that others will say, yep, have done that and it works, or yep, have done that and I hate it. I love, number 1, building teams from across geographies. If we are solving a problem, I get very excited about mixing up the team in all kinds of ways, not just by geography, but subject matter expertise. How about tenure? Mm-hmm. A super experienced person teamed up with a newbie on the team to learn together, because that lower tenured person is going to bring fantastic perspectives to the problem solving and new ways of looking at things and challenge the status quo, which is super fun. So building teams from across geographies. Another example that I have found really helpful is when we find ourselves capacity constrained in one geography. And sometimes the tendency is to say, oh, we're going to need outside counsel more now in this particular country, with all due respect to our wonderful law firm friends. Sometimes I want to say, but what if we moved this person from this geography to that geography to invest in our team more? I get resistance sometimes because somebody will say, oh, but the immigration concept is so complex, or we don't have people who can just move and leave their families behind. And my answer is, I know, but could we ask the question and see if maybe there are 2 or 3 people on the team who would find this terribly exciting? Yeah. So mixing it up across geographies and allowing people to experiment and learn and lean into new areas, even if it's not their expertise. Huge for breaking down silos and creating new relationships and networks within and across teams. And then there are other things like aligning on a common professional development approach for a legal function. That maybe you do learning a little bit different in Singapore than you do in New York, but are there some basic competencies that we want to make sure every member of a legal team is building? And can we create a program for that, for the entire function, with a budget so that people actually can go then get it, but creating common standards to bring the team together and to help us learn and grow and develop together as one team, supporting one firm.
So what's an example of a competency that is equally important no matter where you're practicing?
Communication. How you write like a business person effectively. So that, lawyers are trained to write very differently. Mm-hmm. Law school training is I'm presented with this issue. Here are all the cases. Here's all the supporting case law. on this position. And then in the end, I'm going to tell you, and therefore, we should do this. The business person wants to know, you've asked me whether we can incorporate in Abu Dhabi by Tuesday. Here are the 5 things we need to do. And yes, we can do it. And here's the timeline. And it's 5 bullet points. So communication is the pathway very often to build an effective relationship, trust-based advisory relationship with the business, so that that very busy person who needs to jump from one thing to the next can very quickly read your email, not roll their eyes, and write back yes or no, or can we talk on Tuesday? Effective communication, whether it's an email or a presentation. And I am probably demonstrating terrible oral communication right now.
Not at all. You are laying everything out in a perfectly digestible sort of framework on each item. And you mentioned our friends on the law firm side, and you mentioned capacity constraints and thinking about the makeup of your team. One of the other major challenges, of course, in your role is collaborating with outside counsel. I really enjoy getting to talk to law firms and then corporate legal departments, but they can also be siloed themselves, right? They're very different types of organizations, as you've just said. And there's a lot of conversation now around the relationship between those two stakeholders and whether and how it's changing in light of emerging technologies and all sorts of different dynamics. So how, if at all, has your approach to choosing and managing your outside counsel evolved in recent years, including anything like fee structures, technology, performance metrics, all of the above?
So I have such an old school view on this point, because the things I have valued in working with outside counsel have remained very constant for me, notwithstanding this crazy landscape that we have all been navigating and will continue to navigate in the years ahead. I have always valued, and credit to my lovely starting law firm, Debevoise and Plimpton, for teaching these core skills. Client service, just be responsive when I reach out. Come back to me quickly, because if I'm calling you, I probably have a senior leader breathing down my neck and I'm under pressure. So help me be successful with your responsiveness. 2, practical advice. Please tell me what you think. I don't want a 20-page memo or 30-page memo unless I ask for it, but very often I just want a thought partner that will help me understand a space, but then be very pragmatic about, and therefore, I think I'm going to go in this direction. Does that make sense to you? So I love the outside counsel partner. And by partner, I mean colleague. I don't mean in the hierarchy, but a thought partner. That can be a 30-year associate, a 50-year associate, a partner of 10 years. It's a thought partner. Help me come to a view on whether what I'm planning to do makes sense or not. I don't need opinion level confidence for everything I'm doing. And then 3, be efficient with me, because I too have a budget to manage. I have a budget to fight for with a leadership team, a CFO. And so don't charge me for every minute, and don't staff up when something doesn't need to be super staffed up, and communicate with me and tell me when something's a problem, or if you've given me an estimate and we're going to blow through it, work with me. Think of me as a business partner to you, because that's what I want you to be for me. And so whatever complexities come our way, whether it's a major transaction, a major corporate restructuring, a major partnering arrangement with someone, all of those need for outside counsel, to me, are still going to need those core things I value: responsiveness, pragmatism, efficiency, and looking at me as a partner, and you're going to help me be successful. And I guarantee you, I'm going to help you be successful. So I'm going to do everything I can to help you too. So we're in this together, and I am looking for long-term sustainable relationships that are steady over time.
I think that perspective will really resonate with the audience of lawyers to have this sort of North Star of lawyer attributes that are really valued by clients, especially in an era where we're being challenged to think about technology and particularly AI and what it means for the practice of law. Recognizes that there are human attributes to the relationship between a lawyer and her clients that will continue to be not only important, but maybe the differentiating factor in an era of technology. So have you thought about AI, Lucy, and what skills, what tasks you would like in the future for AI to assume, and which will be tech proof in some sense, always going to the humans?
I am sure that there are many, many thoughtful CLOs out there and others who have given this question a lot of thought. I am still learning. I do find this a very exciting and important space because if we don't stay close to this, we are going to be left behind, and that cannot happen. And I have asked a couple of members of my team and the legal team to make this part of their program, to monitor and watch and try all the things that are coming out and force us to try exciting things that are coming out and partner with our chief technology officer and his team to experiment with new things so that the lawyers aren't coming in at the tail end to say, oh, no, that doesn't work, or no, that raises privacy issues or bias issues or quality issues or whatever. So we're doing on our legal team some things that maybe seem basic, but intended to keep us close to what's new and fresh and worth our checking out. I would say contract review is an area for AI to play a role. Maybe we don't have to review NDAs, where years ago, people wanted to review every single NDA. Maybe we still need to do that. I don't know. But certainly contract reviews in some forms of contracts lend themselves well to the support of AI. Summarizing communications, digesting information, taking a ton of information and creating succinct summaries that can easily be leveraged. Those are two areas, as way of example, that strike me as, oh gosh, yes, let's use technology to be more efficient so that we can free up time to do the more complicated stuff we need to do. But at the end of the day, we are going to need judgment. We are going to need someone to review that draft agreement or markup to make sure it's still a good markup and that it makes sense and that there's consistency in the positions being taken in sections 3 and section 9. And that the communication makes sense. That, for example, a summary of a discussion held at a board meeting is an accurate description of what actually happened and that you're not creating unnecessary risks by saying some things a certain way in that draft. So judgment is still going to be necessary. But can we do some of those things more easily to at least give us a head start in the work? Absolutely.
So you mentioned document summarization, and I was at a conference last week where somebody talked about that as just being a task that lawyers will not be doing for much longer. And it sort of struck me as funny because it already seems very outdated to me as somebody who uses AI frequently, but that's such an important part traditionally of becoming a lawyer. And it's sort of wild to think that I ever sat there and read a document and then started a document from scratch to summarize that document. Which all leads me to constantly be thinking about how we develop the skills of the lawyers of the future when their experience and practice will be very different than yours and mine. So how do you, as the leader of a legal team with talent who are at different points in their development, think about helping them to upskill, to develop judgment faster when maybe some of the tasks that led to judgment formation are changing?
That is such a good question. And I don't have the magic answer to that question, but I'm very mindful of the challenge. I care a lot about professional development. It's simply a topic that for me is fundamental. I cannot be leader of a team where that team and those team members aren't growing and developing and building skills. I will not be proud of myself if I look forward, if I think about 3 years ahead, let's say, and then I look back to this day, Jen, and I say, oh man, my team didn't develop new skills. They're kind of doing the same thing in the same way. They haven't progressed in how they think, how they solve problems, how they communicate, how they build relationships with the business, how they handle nuance and complexity, how they're willing to give their opinion and advice and recommendations. If I have not seen that growth, I think I have failed. Even if I have helped the business grow. I would still, in my book, in the Lucy Lopez book of accountability, I don't think I will have checked the box of success. So for me, success is I have to help the business grow. I was hired to do a job for a business. I'm here, I will do it. But I have a team to help grow and develop. That's the second part of the assignment, and I have to do that for myself. So how do I do that with this landscape of lawyers in different tenures growing over time? So two things come to mind. One is I have to focus individually on these tenures. So what am I doing for my cohort? How am I thinking about my most senior lawyers? How are they growing? What are the skills they need to be building to continue to progress and grow and be better and more effective in their roles? That cohort. Okay, how do I take the lawyers sort of in the middle who've been out of law school for a little while? They're sort of the next second in command, right? And what skills do they need to be building, and how are we effective in their professional development? And then the newer lawyers, they're totally different. Yeah. How do we make sure we're doing effective apprenticeship for them? Because they're going to rely on the summarization that's coming out of AI, but they're still going to need to be able to communicate with a business person if they bump into the CEO in the elevator and they say, "Hi, Jordan, how are you?" You're not going to go pull up your phone to ask somebody to give you a summary of your 2 minutes that you have with that person to say, "It is so great to meet you. I love the work you've been doing on culture and values in our firm. And I'm really proud of your last communication. It resonated with me because I want to be part of a high-performing team." AI will not deliver that in the elevator in the moment. So making sure we're developing the talent of that cohort in teaching core skills that will be sustainable over time, no matter what is happening.
I like that answer a lot because you sort of started by saying you don't know exactly how we'll be developing the skills, but your North Star is that you want to make sure that your team is progressing. And that is a responsibility that you take on as a leader. And my impression following the AI landscape, listening to a lot of other thought leaders about AI, is that not enough leaders are actively even thinking about how they help their teams. And I don't think many people have good answers yet about what that means, but the leadership piece is really being aware of it and helping facilitate learning at all those different points, like you said. And as we sort of come into the close of this amazing conversation, Lucy, one of the things I'm most curious about, which is not really an academic exercise or a business question, I look at somebody like you with so much responsibility, with so much thoughtfulness about how you're guiding your team and you're balancing so much. And you seem so calm and confident and assured. And I would trust you to handle anything that I have to throw at you if I were your client. And I'm just curious how you take care of yourself as a leader of a team dealing with all of this complexity.
So I have days when I am shaky and wobbly and thinking, oh my God. I do a lot of reflecting. I think this is just in my DNA. I tend to do this at the end of the night where I think about how did that day go? And here are the 2 or 3 things I might have done differently today. I do that every day. It's just something that maybe it's not helpful because some might see it as you're beating up yourself, but I see it as a way to identify the opportunities for the next day, because most days I wake up thinking, okay, here's what I'm going to do different today. And that reflection from the night before helps me the next day. So constant reflecting to pivot and adjust my style and be willing to adjust. Not an easy thing to do to adjust, but it's a way to force myself to adjust. Over the years, I've adopted different things to get my mind out of my job that a few years ago, that took the form of, I'm going to take a creative writing class on Friday mornings for an hour just to do something totally different. Right now, it's learning a new language.
Ooh.
And it is literally a way to escape my work and to bring my brain to a different thing that I enjoy. It's a form of learning, but it's a relaxing form of learning because there is absolutely no purpose other than to make me happy and help me order my food in this country when I'm there.
Which language are you learning?
Italian. Italian.
Well, that is a good country to pick if you're going to go order some food
great
there.
Food, great people, great culture, great everything. So I pivot every few years to do something differently that is outside my comfort zone to help me relax and bring my mind out of my day-to-day. And right now, the world is crazy. I'm trying not to read too many things or do too many things. I'm busy, so I can't go out as much or travel as much as I'd like. So it is a language with an app. Duolingo it is.
The best.
Exactly.
Duolingo like stalks me in my shower if I don't practice.
Yes. There you go.
Where are you?
There you go. So that brings technology and learning and judgment and joy in a complex world together.
And not only that, and I know this is not the reason you're doing it. The reason is almost the opposite. But again, going back to some of those core pillars of being able to be innovative, one is activating different parts of your brain so that all of the complicated things that happen under the hood can be more connected. So none of this surprises me, given the innovative leader that you are and your focus really on preparing your team and your clients for the future. I have one last question for you. Yep. Lucy is my favorite name. My daughter's name is Lucy. And you said in the book of Lucy Lopez, I'm wondering, are you familiar with the book Lucy Lopez, Genius
I am
Coder?
familiar with the book of Lucy Lopez, and I have a copy that someone gave me.
I love it. I thought of you the other night because my Lucy was reading the book of Lucy Lopez, or Lucy Lopez, Coding Genius.
Coding Genius.
And I said, I'm talking to a friend on a podcast named Lucy Lopez. Her mind was blown because she, of course...
There is a book. It is a skinny little book. It is a lovely little book. It has nothing to do with me. I happen to have the name, but it is fun nevertheless. And how about Lucy from Peanuts? Lucy, that character was launched March 3rd, 1952. March 3rd happens to be my birthday.
Get out.
Not kidding you.
Lucy's are the best.
Yes, Lucy's are the best. Jen, thank you so much. This is so fun.
Thank you so much for being with us, Lucy. And thanks to everybody out there for listening. We look forward to seeing you on the next episode of Fast Tracked Emergent Issues in the Legal Profession. Until then, take care. I hope you enjoyed this fascinating conversation as much as I did. Visit pli.edu for more insights, education, and resources for navigating this dynamic landscape. And until next time, stay curious and stay adaptable as we work together to chart a course into an exciting future.